I was super disappointed as a child to find out that boys got a perfectly good word like penis and girls got a Chinese word. Because China, vagina.
Hello and welcome to Night School Out of Character episode 8.
Woo-hoo!
Oh my goodness. Guys, we've come such a long way. I can't even believe it.
So far and still climbing.
Yes.
Still climbing. Trekking?
Yeah,
Are
sure.
we?
Walking, hiking.
We're definitely moving forward. So today we wanted to talk about kind of building on our past a little bit. So there's a little bit of background conversation we're going to have, a little bit of leveling up conversation we're going to have, but I kind of want to ask, Michael, why is this important? Why can we not be black belts as soon as we turn 13?
Well, okay, the fact that you described it like that is exactly why we're having this conversation. So whenever you start a game, it is so easy to fall into that trap of, I want to be the best person in the world. I want to be this awesome adventurer that's incredibly gifted. And a lot of times when you're coming up with your backstory and your background, you can easily come up with, I am a prince who doesn't know they're a prince. I'm from royalty. I've been trained my whole life. And then you show up to play and you're a level 1 character. And by the mechanics of the game, you don't know shit. And it's like, how did you go your entire life and you're saying you're amazing, but you can't do anything? It doesn't fit. So I think that's why this is such an important topic, because for a role-playing aspect, to make something believable, which is something we've ascribed to for all of our episodes, is to make something believable in the world, you have to make sure that all of your little details in your own personal character are being played in a way that makes sense. And that means making a story arc for yourself that starts very, very small and meaningless as somebody who really doesn't matter in the world, to how can you get to that endpoint where you are somebody who is recognized by society as that badass character.
Yeah, it's kind of like going from some kid on the playground going to like a world superhero. You need all of the steps in between to get there. Hovda, you are really good at building backstory and kind of planning ahead. So I want to hear a little bit from you about how you kind of do that and how it's like an ongoing process.
Well, I mean, for me, the easiest way to describe it that I think most people understand, it's like using the sort of comic book world where, you can play this one of two ways. It's like, I can either like wake up and my mutant gene has activated, and all of a sudden I have all these sort of powers that are amazing, I can do them and whatnot. It's like, if you want to play that way, that's great. Or you can go the opposite, where it's like you're building a character where it's like, I'm Steve Rogers with no powers. I have this backstory, I have these characteristics, I'm growing as a person, it's like, and now I'm gaining these powers, but I have to learn to use these powers. It's not just, oh great, I have this power, let me fly around the world backwards and turn back time and do anything I want to do because I'm Superman. It's like, no, it's, it doesn't work that way. In the real world of this fantasy world, it wouldn't make sense from a character story standpoint.
Well, and so, I think even going beyond powers, when you think of a character like Batman, it wasn't overnight that all of a sudden you have this character who's just incredibly gifted and skilled mentally and physically and just all of a sudden can go do everything. There's always this progression of training, and then over time, building of new gadgets, building of new ways to counterbalance as like the criminals and supervillains were growing, how can you affect, like you had to work around those situations. And that's what it is. It's just making sure that you are not jumping to the end. But what you could do is take that endpoint and let your GM know what you want, which I think is the key part of making a character feel natural in their leveling. Day one, if you really, really want to be something, tell your GM, and I guarantee you, they will find a way to give you a path to get there, but they're going to be the ones to make sure that it fits within the world and the rules of the world. And there might be some negotiation of, you know, if you want this to work, you are going to have to consider doing these set things. And I think that's what makes the game really exciting, especially in our kind of format that we play in, is we do have those conversations. I sit down with each one of you at different times when we're alone, and I, even as we played, it's okay, well, let's talk about where you're at right now. Do you have a goal, or are you thinking about where you want to be in a couple of sessions, in a month, in a year? Because I want to make it feel natural, and I want to give you little small stepping stones, little milestones for you to progress to make it feel like you're actually growing naturally.
Well, and I think especially for this campaign, Michael, when we first sat down and did session 0, you did a really good job of talking to us about that, but also laying out, like, we need to have like the small goal, the medium goal, the big goal, or like the short term, medium, long term, where do we want to end up, which was helpful in building a backstory, but also, like you said, having the chance to sit down with you and talk about, okay, this is what's happening, this is what you've kind of gained, what do you want to do with that, or hey, you're about to level up, what are you thinking about? And having that conversation, that's been helpful for me in like, hey, these are kind of your choices, where do you want to go with this? Well, this happened in our story, I'd love to build off of that.
Well, the hard part about it is, as you level, for anybody maybe who's watching this and you're newer to the game and you haven't got to get to many levels, or if you're somebody who plays a lot of campaigns but you only get to that level 5 range, which I've noticed many games will play 1 to 5 and then stop. And it's really rare unless somebody usually starts and says, we're going to begin at level 8. If you want to get to those further ranges where you do start getting your intense spells and you were able to pick up multiple feats and you start getting your modifiers into those higher range levels where you really become invincible at sometimes, to get there, you have to kind of balance out. You have to balance out real and tactical. And this is something I want to talk to you guys about as players, because as a GM, I want to make sure that my players understand you have freedom to really be whoever you want. But when you roll your initial roll, and for those of you, there's lots of different ways that people can start off with their stats. Some people will do a point buy-in system where you have a certain number of points to divvy out amongst your skills. There's also where we have a standard array where you would have, it's a set number, from like 10 or 9 to 16, I can't remember. But you can divvy them up and assign 1 number to each attribute, or you can roll. And even within the rolling, to get a randomized number, different people do it different ways. The very first time that we did it, I had y'all roll 5 D6s, and I said, take the top 3. Well, the chances of getting a really high number on 5 die are really, really big. So y'all had some really incredible stats, which is why in our last campaign, Kat and Josh, I feel like y'all had some really intense characters who could do some crazy stuff. And it felt overpowered at times, but it was still fun and engaging. And I gave y'all the challenge of that. For this campaign, I scaled it back and I had y'all roll only 4, and y'all took the top 3. Mm-hmm. And we started getting some lower number rolls. And it was like, that's when it comes into play of, you might have a low attribute. It might be that your strength is incredibly low. But you
Hi,
still...
my name is Q.
But that doesn't mean it's a detriment to your character. However, there's some people I notice that when they're building their character and they want to level up, they see that lower number and they think, that's a weakness. I don't want a weakness. I need to get rid of it. So there's times when you can, at 3 points of your level up, you get attribute points where you can add in either 2 numbers to 1 or 1 point to 2 separate skills. And I remember y'all would go to that all the time. You'd be like, well, I'm going to add in 2 points to my strength because I am real weak. Well, that's fine. It really doesn't change that much. By adding in 2 points to any of your skills, you're not really getting that much better. And I think that's something that some people struggle with, is they look at the numbers on their sheet and they think, I have to solve these weaknesses because I won't be able to survive. But what you could do is think about, as a character, how have I established who I am and how can I make myself better at what it is my character naturally does. And it'll help out your role playing. It'll make the story way more exciting, if not entertaining, because usually those weaknesses are the things that cause the funniest stuff to happen. And then you'll actually notice that it's easier for you to use the new skills you get in realistic ways, because you're putting your strength, especially if you choose feats, you start choosing things that go with the way your character plays. And recently, since we're kind of playing this live, all 3 of you actually chose a feat on your last level up that should be coming up on our next episode.
Spoilers.
Oh, it's okay. Y'all leveled up.
Hey.
But no, this is the first time that any of y'all took a feat.
That's true.
So
it's very new, but it's so exciting. Well, and
Yeah.
that kind of goes into what we were saying before.
I've taken a feat once before.
Is like having that open communication with your game master about what you're planning on doing. That way they can introduce mentors or scenarios where you would practice those skills and actually gain those skills in the game, and not just wake up one morning and all of a sudden you're able to do this really cool thing that just wouldn't make sense in real life. So I think that's one of the biggest parts of leveling up that really play into the way that we build our story and build our game, that makes it more believable.
I like
Yeah.
that. Just the big GM check-in, because even like looking back at past experiences in like just in that same campaign and having the chance to go over that with the GM, or say, okay, I think this is like, when is it okay for this to happen? Or when can our characters do this? Or can they talk to each other about building a strategy, or like any of those things? Just that conferring with your GM, that's been really helpful.
Well, it also helps having the players who are willing to do some of that work on their own. So, Hovda, I want to talk to you about this. Playing Dakar, who we know is a druid, and if anybody who has ever played a druid or has been in a campaign with a druid, you know that a druid can wild shape, and it's one of the basics aspects of a druid is like they can wild shape. They can.
That's why a lot of people will pick to be a druid. Yeah.
Yeah. But if you stayed up with us to this far in the campaign, Dakar has not used wild shape once, no matter how low his health gets, no matter what, once. Can you give us some, without giving, I don't want you to give away anything that is kind of long narrative, but why would you make that choice to not use something that's a staple of your class?
Well, it's a little double-edged sword thing, because it's like, it's one of those things with the world we're in, magic sort of a taboo, but also like as a character, like you said, like this is something new to him, that's like, I may have dreams about this, I may have feelings about this, but it's one of those things where it just hasn't come to a head yet, where it's like my sort of inner being, says, oh, I need to do this right now, almost like, a Bruce Banner Hulk situation where, it's like just instinct takes over and something happens, and if I know what's happening or not, I can explain it, is a different story. But it's one of those things where I just, as a character, I don't feel like my character's been there yet.
Which I really commend you for, because that kind of brings us to our next point, is choosing the story over being able to use the skills right away when you are leveling up. Because there's a lot of times when you do level up, and I know that we don't play this way, but there are, in a lot of campaigns, you can level up mid-session and you automatically would gain new skills once you do level up. And it doesn't make sense to level up, and from what, like I said, from one morning to, or from one night to the next morning, have these new skills that you would be able to use. And Hovda, I think you're really good at choosing the story, the overall story, and your character development over being able to do really cool stuff with in your abilities. And that's one of the things that I feel like we all do really well, is choosing the story and choosing our character development over just using our leveled skills.
Now, I will say though, it is not wrong, nor should you be afraid to actually use a level up situation
Exactly.
to fix a problem. And when I say fix a problem, I mean, there's been multiple times where I have found that within our party that I'll create a character based on what I really want, and I'm very glad that I have not encountered any GMs that have worked with me as a player who have kind of told me, no, you can't take that race or that class because we really need you to be this to balance out the party. I'm a strong believer in, if the party comes in unbalanced, they need to cope with it and figure out how to balance their party a different way through other means, whether it's training, multi-classing, or finding items or some way to fix weaknesses. Level up opportunities where you can take a feat are absolutely great moments to realize we're really struggling. What can I do to fix this problem? But then talk with your GM and see if you can find a way to make it naturally fix in the story, instead of, we don't have a healer. All right, I'm going to go ahead and just be a healer. Well, why are you going to be a healer?
Mm-hmm.
Like, as you're leveling up, what is it that's going to cause you to do this naturally? I feel like those are the key moments of fix weaknesses in your party to help your group out, but make sure that you're talking with the GM at all times.
Yes. Bottom line.
Yeah, I know. I've felt very blessed to like play with like some good GMs in my life, and that's one of those things where like as a player, like I have an idea like the character I want to be from 1 to 20. If I'm ever going to see 20 is a different story, but it's one of those things like what you're saying, like the fixing of it, where it's like, okay, like my character, like, you know, as a level 1 whatever, I know what I'm going to get at 3, 5, 8, 11, whatever it is. That's like, I know what I need to do sort for myself character wise, but also it gets to the point where it's like, okay, I need to do this to a stat or this to a stat or something like that to meet, you know, possibly some game rules to build a multi-class, whatever it may be. So it's one of those things when you are leveling up, you may have to consider that sort of stuff, because I know even like going back to what you're saying about like just getting to add 1 point to something, I was like, as a ranger, getting to add 1 to my dexterity added a lot, you know, once you get to like a certain level sort of thing. So it's like, you know, even though feats are cool, there is some times where it's like, you know, depending on how you're playing your character, how your group is, you may just need something like that, because it's like playing in this quest, at least some others previous. So, but it's like the way I look at it is like, this is a co-op game. It's like, I'm not trying to be, you know, the Modern Warfare first person shooter, go out there and get 97 kills so my team wins while everybody else just hunkers down a hole somewhere. You know, it's like, no, it's like, this is a co-op game. We need to defeat this stuff together, help each other, and win, as it were, you know, as a team.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really interesting that you mentioned when you build your character at level 1, you're already thinking what you want your character to look like at level 20. Because I know I do the exact same thing, but mine might be a little bit more fluid, because depending on how the story goes. And I know in past campaigns, I've had an idea of what I want it to look like, but then the way that the story progressed, it really changed, and I ended up multi-classing, which I think is an amazing topic that we'll kind of address at a different day, is multi-classing. But yeah, I really like that idea of building your level 1 character, thinking about your level 20 character.
Well, and I think that ties into that short-term, medium-term, long-term goal.
Mm-hmm.
And I think even maybe, like, I think about how I want my character to end up in the very, very end, however we may get there, but being open-minded, like you said, like I'm a very go with the flow kind of person. So I think I take that even more to heart with this sort of thing, in terms of where's the story going to take me? Like, and what are the things that happen in the story? And that's one of my favorite things is your storytelling part, Michael. And I know we're all a team for that, but that's one of my favorite things is getting to sit and like be a part of this story and see where it takes my character and like having an active role in that, but really making sure whatever it is I'm choosing makes sense with the story.
So to give a little clarification, because you brought it up a couple times, the goal aspect of the way I run my players in kind of session zero, but really our session zeros, we've talked about it before, it's not always us sitting down on one day and having a session. It's multiple conversations over weeks of me just chatting with you at the bar whenever we're sitting down. And it's just discussing like, hey, have you considered your character yet? Are you thinking about a class? And then we piece it together. But the one thing that I use is I ask all of my players to come up with 3 goals, and I base them, I call them short-term, mid-term, and long-term goals. But what really it comes down to is if you had 3 little story arcs for your character, what are the things that make sense for those levels of characters? So it's another way to think of it is a level 1 to a level 5 character pretty much are going to be handling mundane social issues, things that are happening in local towns. It's nothing that's life changing. They might be fighting off beasts or helping save small towns, but it's their capability is I can handle these local issues. When you get that 5 up to about 12, 13, you start noticing that the skill sets start doing some really cool things, and you start getting powerful enough where you could take on nations, you could lead armies, you could infiltrate organizations and topple them. So that's a bigger goal for you. And I want you to know the difference of what is something that I want to do locally and then something that in the future, depending on what happens, I want to have this bigger goal of I will affect this. And then the last one is those upper levels that a lot of people don't get to. When you get to those higher 15, 16, 17 up levels, it's almost God status. It's you can change the world doing certain things. What is it you're going to make a stand for? And it doesn't have to be a specific goal of I want to be the president of the island in this year. But you could say things. I've had ideas where it's like, when I get to that point, I want to free my people. When I get to this point, I want to dethrone this dictator. I want to topple this organization. It's those kind of statements of this is a problem in my life. I can't affect it at the very beginning because I won't have any power. But when I get power, this is what I want to do. And what I love as a DM is once I have those 3, I start planning the entire scope of what I want the story to kind of look like. And then I backtrack down to your smallest goal. And those are the things I start spoon feeding you. But I can also give you small little hints of what's to come. And as a player, sometimes you pick those up and I get to see that little glimmer in your eye of, I see where this is going, but I'm going to hold it to myself. And the other players have no idea.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's also, I love those moments when y'all don't understand anything that's going on in the story. And
again, hi, my name is Q.
But as a DM, I know I've just set you up for something and you might not even know it's going to happen because I didn't tell you how you're going to get to that goal. And I'm not going to tell you. I'm going to let you figure out your own way, but I'm already setting you up. And then when it finally happens, it's that moment of realization of the spotlight is on me. I made it here. Can I do it?
And I think those goals are so important because to achieve those goals, you can't just, I'm not going to say you can't, but it's a lot less believable if you're just hack and slash and building levels. It really is, they're chapters in a story. And that's what we're doing. We're building a story. Woo. And speaking of leveling up, there should be some kind of content going out about our characters leveling up, going out pretty soon. So if that's out by the time that this episode goes out, we'll have that linked below. But kind of let us know how you like to level up in your stories or how your characters like to level up. Do you choose ability scores? Do you choose feats? Why? I don't know. Let us know.
Let us know.
Because we won't know.
Share the knowledge, share the wealth.
But go ahead and click that subscribe button down below and click the bell to be notified of any future episodes of Night School Out of Character or Night School Intrigues of Etter Isle, because we are back recording with regular episodes and we're back to our regular schedule of every other Friday with those, and I'm so excited and they're amazing. So yeah, I really liked this conversation. I thought this was a good one. So until next time.
Click the sub, help us level.
Yay.
Help us.
Yeah, level us up.
Level us up. See you later.